Hello, everybody, and welcome back. It's time now for you to join the conversation, and we have lots of questions from our viewers about this topic. We're talking about adoptions. Our guest is Tim Webre. We were talking about facilitators, and actually, we have a question from a viewer who says, should I use a facilitator to find a baby? So we'll let you continue on with that.
I'm going to tell her, be very careful. It's at your own risk, and I'm going to leave it at that.
Yeah. Well, tell us, I mean, why do you say that?
Well, there are advantages that you have bigger exposure, a bit more exposure to more children. We are talking about something that is, a high risk of it not going through any adoption. That's not regulated by the state. I can't tell you that this is with an adoption agency. If it's an adoption agency, I can tell you they're following all the state regs. I cannot tell you that with the facilitator. You're going to have to do, the old expression, buyer beware. You are going to have to do all the legwork, and you cannot trust that you cannot trust that they're meeting any regulations that Louisiana put in place.
I don't know if they have an Angie's list that you can check them out for the facilitators.
I don't know, but yeah, the internet is a wonderful thing that you can find things on the internet.
Well, I mean, do you have a legal leg to stand on since they're not regulated if in fact something does go sour?
It's all going to be on the contract you sign, and I would think you would.
Well, and I guess that's another thing.
I don't think that they make a guarantee, right?
Yeah, I don't think
they're not guaranteeing you that they're going to find you a baby.
I promise you they're not
making the money
it.
regardless of what happens.
I promise you they're not.
So that's why there's that risk, right?
Yeah, or even a suitable baby for you. Not all babies are suitable for all parents.
Right. Okay, let's get to some more of our questions here. This person says, my family's adoption will become final later this year. Before that happens, what sort of things can happen to cancel the adoption? I was told that if someone in our family commits a crime, the adoption won't be finalized. Does that even include something like a speeding ticket?
No, it doesn't include. It's the goal, and still, it's always going to be the best interest of the child.
Okay.
It is not the best interest of a child for an adoption not to go through for a speeding ticket. In fact, Louisiana, the legislature just this session passed a law making it easier to get an adoption, even if you have a criminal record.
Within reason, right?
Within reason.
If you're going 100 miles an hour, your kids are in the car without seatbelts.
That's something else.
That would be that might have an impact.
That's something else. That might not be a speeding ticket.
Yeah. Okay, so speeding ticket's not going to hamper an adoption.
Speeding ticket's not, and even some misdemeanors won't. And that is something that could upset the apple cart.
Okay. All right. Anything else that you want to add to that? What sort of things can cancel the adoption?
The adopting parent can back out. If something happens between that 6 month and a year, the parents giving up the children for adoption can't. But supposing the adopting parent has a heart attack and can no longer take care of the children. I mean, there will be circumstances where he will be, the person might back out.
Okay. All right. Our next question gets into the rights of the birth parents and the children when it comes to finding. This question says, my daughter was adopted and she hopes to reach out to her birth mother. Our family embraces this, but the birth mother lives in another country and we don't have much information about her. How can we find her? Is there a resource we can turn to?
In Louisiana, we have an adoptive registry. Someone can put if someone gives up a child for an adoption, can register so that child, when she reaches, or he or she reaches 18, can find them. I don't know what country we're talking about. Maybe they have a registry. If I were them, I would call the adoption agency, if there is an adoption agency. I would call an adoption lawyer that specializes in international adoption and find out. I off the hand, with just that question, I couldn't answer that for them because I don't know what country.
But you were saying earlier that international adoptions really are not happening as frequently as
they're not happening as frequently.
Why is that?
The United States and most of the civilized world has adopted the Hague Convention. Most countries, every country, the most precious resource they have is their children.
Right.
And they don't want their children to be adopted in a foreign country. Right now, I have been told the only international adoptions that are going forward right now are from Haiti because of their circumstances. So it's possible to get an international adoption, but what you're going to be doing is you're going to be getting a child out of an orphanage, which are going to be, these children are going to have a lot of developmental issues because they were not raised by a parent.
Yeah,
That's
so
sad.
lots to consider there.
Right.
Another question is, do I have to own a home to adopt a child? If I'm a renter, does that make me less likely to be eligible to adopt a child?
You don't have to adopt. You don't have to own a home. You can be a renter, especially with foster care. They might even pay for your if you're adopting a foster care child. They might even the state might even help you pay for your rent.
Well, that brings us to our next question. How can I find out if I'm eligible for adoption assistance from the government?
You have to go through DCFS, the Department of Children and Family Services. They have a website. Get on the phone, and you might be eligible for a special needs child to get assistance.
I just want to add to your answer from a question or two back, trying to find out information about the birth mother. Another option, it's maybe a little out of the box, is there are specialized private investigators who know how to go back channel. If you've got the money to pay for some of these private investigators, they can get information that normal channels might not provide. And there are ethical private investigators who could do this without subjecting anybody to getting in any trouble. But it depends on how badly you need to know. If there's a health concern, there's sometimes the state agencies will even access information.
That's
as
true.
well.
Does it depend, the information that's available, does that all depend on whether it's a closed or open adoption?
No, that's should all be available.
That should all be available.
Should all
Okay,
be
well,
available.
we'll talk a little bit about
Yeah.
that, closed and open adoptions.
All right, open adoption is where the parent is going to have, the parent giving up the child for adoption will have contact of some sort post the adoption. All right. Basically there's an agreement. Sometimes it's very simple, where every year I'm going to send you photographs of your child to show that they're prospering. If that agreement is broken, it does not upset the apple cart. The adoption still goes through. You will not undo an adoption if you do not send off a picture. Okay. Now, with a private adoption, because there's a lot more control. One of the reasons why you want to consider private adoption as opposed to an agency adoption, even as opposed to just the expense of it, you can structure that how you want. I have been involved in adoption cases where a mother had 2 children. The third was on the way. She couldn't support that. She knew she couldn't take care of the third child. She put up the child for adoption. They became, the adopting parents and her became good friends.
Really?
So this child is going to grow up with 2 families.
It will be,
And there will be
able to
open,
the
there
birth
will
family
be,
and the adoptive family.
there will be
Regular visitation.
Regular visitation.
The biological mother would get to see the child she gave up for adoption.
yes.
That's an
Now,
interesting
now again,
possibility.
if these open agreements are not honored, the adoption still goes through. The adoption's still good. It's just they have recourse to the court to say, you can have visitation. The other thing in terms of the foster care cases, which we talked about, a lot of these children coming through adoptions have very close ties to family members. All right. And it is in the best interest of these children that they maintain those ties. So supposing a child is freed for adoption, they're very close to their grandmother, but they cannot, grandmothers, for health reasons, can adopt the children. The court there can be an open adoption where the child has continuing contact with family members.
Nice.
And it's good, it's good for everybody.
It's good for everybody all the way around. Okay,
Right.
one last question before we leave. What if I want to adopt more than one child at a time?
State might even pay you to do that. If under the new Foster Care Act, the state Faith and Families Act, one of the provisions is when you have children in foster care where they're hard to adopt because there's multiple children in the family and they want to keep them together, so they have the brothers and sisters. you might even be paid to adopt more than one children at a
Wow,
time.
interesting.
great.
So it is possible.
It is possible.
Okay, wow. Well, we are out of time. Thank you so much. We have learned so much in these two shows about the adoption process, both the private adoption and through the foster care system. Tim, thanks so much for being on the show.
Thank you. Thank you. It was my pleasure.
And thank you for being with us today. We hope that we've given you some helpful information to help you on your journey to adoption.
If you would like to share this show with someone or look at some of our other topics, you can watch every episode online at johnredmannpoa.com. Thanks so much, and we'll see you next time on John Redmann, Power of Attorney.